Hello there. How's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing okay? Nice time to speak to you. How you doing?
Pretty good, thanks. Yeah, not bad. Thanks for getting in touch.
No
I
problem.
really appreciate the effort. Let me grab. Actually, no, I was going to say headphones, but I think it's all right.
Well, yeah. So, start a question. I guess how are you doing during COVID? I know you had your album, and we can talk about that. But other than that, how you been?
Not bad. It's been I mean, it's been a pretty big change. Obviously, everyone's been feeling it, but no, I've been pretty lucky. I mean, been able to just do enough to keep going, and everyone I know has been safe and healthy, and so that's really as good as it can get. I mean, all my family are back in England, and no one's been affected badly. Parents are still alive, and old people are still going, and stuff like that. So you know, it could have been a hell of a lot worse. So it's been I'm just yeah, I know I'm pretty lucky. But it's yeah, some weird things going on, and kind of long term how that will go with things like visas. I mean, I don't know how that's going to change because of COVID. So there's some strange things to think about. But no, pretty good on the whole. Yeah, how about yourself?
I'm pretty doing all right. I'm right here at college. Most of the things are shut down, but I can still walk around campus. It's not too bad, but it's definitely like an island in its own way. If you understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying. Yeah. Other than that, pretty
yeah,
all right.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, starting to miss some people. I think that's where it's getting now. Starting to miss hanging out with people. But everyone's going through that. I think.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I want to congratulate you on what you've been doing with your quarantine. Your cover album is
Oh,
amazing.
oh thanks.
I took a re-listen this morning, and I'm still haunted by it. So let's dive right in, shall we?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, go for it.
So compared to Method of Madness, Covering COVID is very stripped back. What influenced that decision?
Um, I started when I did the album, the first one, the Method to Madness. It was all giant production, and it took a couple of years, and it was. I mean, there's everything in there, all these different tracks, and it took a ton to mix and everything. And I finished it, and I thought about playing live. And the idea was I knew I just wouldn't be able to play it live because I didn't have a band. I didn't have the money to put together a band. It wasn't like I could, get a bunch of people and do a collaborative thing because it was all written and done. And so I would need people to play it how I wanted. And so I knew I would have to pay them. And so that wasn't an option. But I knew that if I did want to do anything, I'd have to figure out a way to play live. And then so I'd never really sung and play. I mean, before that album, I'd never sung lead really. I sang some backing and then just sang as much as I could over those years to try and get to a decent level. And then knew the next thing is that I'd go and play live. And there were some open mics and some acoustic nights around. I thought, well, and I'd always loved people like, Johnny Cash and Bob Dylan and the real stripped down people, and even like Chris Cornell when he was doing his acoustic stuff. And so I thought, well, the only way to do it is to try and rewrite all the songs on acoustic and then sing them as one, which I didn't do when I wrote the album. It was all parts and things layered up, and then it came out of that. But so that was where it started when I was mixing the album. The first one, I just tried to start figuring out how to play the songs on guitar, on one guitar, and sing them, and then really started getting into that, and realized like if I want to play live, I have to just get better at singing, and the only way to do that is just to do it all the time. And then I realized that, well, even if I did every song on that album, there's still only 10 songs, and I knew I wouldn't be able to do all of them. So I thought, well, try and figure out a cover of two, and then that's where it happened. It was just the a kind of the complete opposite of just like, well, how do you figure it out a full album onto one guitar? And then it just went into covers, and then it was like, oh, maybe I'll do another cover. And then I started just really enjoying it. And then I just thought it was interesting to do the complete opposite of a huge production album, is to do, well, what's the complete opposite? And it was just me on my own live, one take, and not edit any of it, not tune any of it, and just put it there. And so it was just quite interesting. I just felt like after going through the last one, doing a whole production just didn't seem like anything I wanted to do. And then it just came about. But yeah, it was a frustrating time in itself, just because with the editing and stuff on the old one, you can fix anything that's wrong. But when you were doing that one, you just had to sing it again and again and again and again. And it had its own frustrations. But yeah, so it was just to do the opposite of the first one.
So when you say one take, does that mean like multiple takes you settle on the best, or is it really just one take?
Oh, so I know I did hundreds. I mean, I've been doing that. I mean, I've been singing those songs. I mean, yeah, when I first had the idea, and then I would record them on my iPhone, on the little GarageBand app, which is actually pretty good. And so I did hundreds and hundreds of takes of it on that just to try and get it decent enough. And then when I got that, then I did it with the mic and the filming, and that brought its own problems because I'd never really, well, recording is so different from just singing in your room, especially when you've got a camera and if you screw one little bit up, it's just like, right, start again, start again, start again. Because I knew there's just no point. And so, yeah, it took like 5 or 6 months of just recording and filming and just to get those takes. And so, yeah, it was pretty frustrating, actually. I got quite annoyed with myself in that because I just didn't think I was good enough. And so it was just months and months of singing the same things to get to a level where I thought, actually, that's good enough to put out. And then even now, I still think I can't really listen to that album at all. I just hear everything wrong with it, and so it's quite hard. You hear every note, but no, I'm really pleased how it came out in the end. But it's just tough to listen back when it's only me.
Yeah. On the other hand, though, I think it's interesting you said there's no tuning or anything. It's kind of a lost art nowadays in music. Everything's auto-tune or the slightest
Yeah.
little bit, even if it's just a few cents. But I don't know, the one take thing, I think it comes through. It's so much more organic sounding, and it really comes through on what you did.
No, thanks. Yeah, I do like it, and there's a lot of those. I'm a big Howard Stern fan, and his big thing is having people come in and just do live takes on their own and just acoustic guitar. So I listen to you know hundreds of people do that on there, and my housemate, he's like a folk kind of really good singer, and he does that thing as well. And so it was just around that sort of music, and and it just felt like it was just something I just started listening to a lot more and going down that direction. But yeah, I do love that, where you can hear the slight fuck ups, and you can hear if there's a bit where it's like, what was that? Was that meant to be there? But yeah, I mean, the reason the first album was so edited and stuff is because that was just, I wasn't good enough. Like, I hadn't really sung that much. And so I sang hundreds and hundreds of takes, but then there are little bits where it's put into place and just helped. And then, yeah, so it was just doing the opposite. And again, I like both for different reasons, but it's nice to be able to do both.
Well, Mr. Hitchens, I must say, I feel like what you've done is not only, well, okay, let me start over. So basically, there's two different sides of you. You already explored. My understanding is you self-produced the first one. You self-produced this one too, right? So,
Yeah.
but despite the different approaches, you still have very great mastery of dynamics, whether it
Oh,
be the crescendo of Let It Die or the little whispers in Helter Skelter. How are you're dynamically informed? I know on one interview you said Great New Meaning, there's a Hans Zimmer Interstellar influence. What about the other songs?
what would influence them?
Well, dynamically speaking, you have a great understanding of like crescendos and
Oh,
deep
but
low
I mean,
crescendos.
that really, the big one is Pink Floyd. Like, I went to see the Desert Trip Festival, which was I don't know if you remember, it was like 2016, and it was Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, Paul McCartney, Neil Young, Roger Waters, and The Who. And I love music, but I just never really quite, everything had never quite clicked about, like, I liked Pink Floyd and this and that, but I never really got all of it. And then when I saw it, and we were there, and I was there, and it was just this amazing experience, and just how he kind of, it's just like you are really just taking people where you want them to go. And it's like, so the quiet bits, like where the right part of the song is, or the right part of the show is, that people might be like burn out because everything's so big. And then it's like, right, you bring it down there, and you just let people relax, and you let people do this, and then you start building. And it was all that. It really was like the Pink Floyd stuff, where it's, like a Grey Gig in the Sky, where it's just one piano, and then it's the vocals, and then the stuff kicks in. Or Us and Them was the big one, where it just starts out really chill, and there's this huge crescendo. And there's bits in my songs which I didn't realize that I clearly got from those songs, and I never really thought about it. Like the first song with the Let It Die verse part, is like a lot of that groove is kind of it's a bit like Time, the Pink Floyd song. And then the last big song with the big outro, that was kind of like the Comfortably Numb big guitar bit. But it was like, and I never really thought about it when I was making it. And then it was like about a year later when I started listening to different things again. It was just like, oh, that's where I got that from. Oh, that's where I got that from. So Pink Floyd was the big one, yeah, absolutely. And then, but then for the acoustic stuff, I think it's just because when I lived with a few other people, I just didn't really want to sing that loudly and annoy people. And so I got used to singing really quietly. And then when you write a song that, or try and cover a song and it's all the same dynamic, it just felt a bit boring and a bit flat. And it is that idea of building and dipping and how to, with just, yeah, not even necessarily getting loud with everything, but you might just bring the voice down a bit or pick the voice up a bit, and just learning how to write songs better by doing little things like that. But yeah, Pink Floyd was a huge one for that.
Cool. I must say, singing quiet is probably one of the hardest things you can do as a singer. So the fact that you're nailing that, that's very good.
Oh, yeah, that took. I mean, that was just because there were people I lived with, and I thought I was making so much noise, and so it was just learning how to try and sing a bit quieter.
Moment of necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, speaking of which, I think it really just had a great impact on the song, the arrangement process. Like High and Dry, for example. I know the song has been like kind of poppy. There's a lot of like
Yeah.
guitars, but yours is just transformed. It's so dramatic. It's so quiet.
That was a funny one. I didn't really think of any of those songs as like, I'm going to do that song, I'm going to do that song. It was just, I would hear a song, and then I'd hear the different version in my head. Like with High and Dry, it was really weird, actually. I think I was listening to Howard Stern. I can't remember what he was talking about. He might have even just said high or something, or dry or something like that. And I thought of High and Dry, and I had that. And then immediately it was I had the Don't Leave Me Dry in the like the 6/8 thing. And that just popped in my head, and I thought, oh, that's cool. What's that? And then it was like, went to the guitar and just like, don't leave me dry, ding, 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 and that. And then the rest of it didn't take very long, because it was just the idea. It kind of, once I had the idea, the rest of it fell into place. I mean, it's not a very complicated version. The chords are just, I mean, I think it's 3 chords in it, so it was just, as soon as I had the idea that I thought had something to it, that was where it went. And yeah, High and Dry I wasn't really planning on it, because it's I think it's kind of an obvious song. Almost everyone's done it. But I thought once I had the idea, I was like, oh, I think that's kind of new and interesting. And so, yeah, why not?
What are the other songs? Was there a similar like epiphanic moment where you're just like, okay, I'm going to change the rhythm, I'm going to syncopate this?
Yeah, it was a bit of a mix. Like, so there was some that, most of them just came from hearing the song and then like, oh, that would be an idea. Like I remember, and a lot of them I just heard a lot at the time. Like I listened to Sirius Radio, and they have things like Classic Vinyl channel, which is all 60s and 70s, and Lithium, which is all 90s and grunge and rock and stuff. And so I was listening to a lot of that music. And then, yeah, like American Woman was always on that channel. And I think I just had that. I've been listening to a lot of soul as well, and a lot of like groove-based music, and so I just kind of wanted to get everything you could nod your head to. And with American Woman, it was, it's like down, 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 and then it was just like down, 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 and it just was like, oh, just there's the groove, and there's like, and that's the big thing with all the songs. It's just like, if it can get you moving your head, or that if it's one guitar and a voice, you just need to be able to get some sort of like nod or foot tap, and then you're on the right track. And a lot of it was that. It was just, yeah, I can't remember the other ones. What was the other one? Helter Skelter. I think that was just, I had a riff, or I figured that out, that the early guitar riff out. And then you almost, some of them are just an accident. You just sing the word and it's like, oh, that's cool. And then you just go down there. I remember the Meatloaf one. We were listening to VH1 Storytellers Meatloaf for some reason in the garden, and they played that song, took the words that right out of your mouth, and it was really quick. And I just thought it sounded like a Bruce Springsteen song, which actually a few of them do. They're almost, because I think the E Street Band played on Bat Out of Hell. I think a lot of the same people. I know the piano played it. I can't remember his name now. And so there was that Bruce Springsteen feel to it. And I thought, how would he play that song? And it was just, and I listened to his, the Netflix thing, the Broadway thing he did, where it was just him on the guitar. And so I was like, oh, how would Bruce Springsteen do it? And it was just like a really empty version of it, just barely any notes, strip it down completely. And then when I had that idea, it was just it was trying to play that song with as few notes as possible, which is kind of what the whole thing was, is trying to play the songs with as few notes as possible and keep it as simple as possible. But yeah, they all just different things at different times, but it was just funny how it worked out.
Yeah. I mean, Helter Skelter sounds like it could be in like the next big blockbuster. It's just,
Oh, cool. Thanks.
yeah, you're welcome. But speaking of grooves, that reminds me to ask you a little bit about the song Shake.
Yeah.
So it's been over a year since that came out, that Method to Madness album. And Shake has always stood out to me as a very strong groove. Like it sounds like a stomping giant at the bridge. Dun, dun.
Yeah.
What was the idea for that? And is it intentional that it shares your name?
No, I didn't realize that for about 8 months. It was really, that's how dumb it was. It was just like, oh yeah, Shake, Diamond Shake. Yeah, so, yeah. But all of them started with the music. I didn't have any, I just did the first. But that one, specifically talking about Pink Floyd, that was Pig's 3 different ones from the Animals album. When I saw him play that at the Desert Trip thing, they had this, that was like the greatest moment of the entire set. It was absolutely amazing. And they had, because it was this big Trump thing, and it was all, you know, about politics and the whole message of the song about corruption and everything. And it was just this real intense moment at this show, because it was just before the election. I think it was, it must have been 2000, yeah, it must have been like a month before the election in 2016. And it was this cool thing. And so that just stuck with me. I think kind of maybe subconsciously, I had a version of that song and it wasn't quite the same. And then I just started changing it after that, and it became how it was. But with the groove, I mean, and then the bit in the middle and how it comes down, that's pretty much the same as Pig's 3 different ones. But I just didn't really notice it at the time that it was coming out like that. And then, yeah, similarly, it was just simple. With the drum track is just dum, ba, dum. And then the bass, which is my kind of lead instrument, there was so much going on. It was just like, okay, we'll just stay on the same note, with a boom, 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 and just really just drive it home and keep it as simple as possible. But yeah, I mean, they're all just, it took like 20, 30 different versions to get to those finished tracks of just rewriting. So I think it was just try everything and eventually figure something out. But yeah, that's a real one about Pink Floyd. That was almost like exactly where that came from.
Well, thank you for answering the question. Now, another thing too is, I keep saying that phrase, another thing too is, but the album, the other day you just released another music video. It was for Flow, which is my personal favorite from the album. How are there still music videos coming out?
Well, that was the idea. I mean, originally, yeah, well, we're going to do one for all 10. And then when I started it and I did the album, I knew I had to do some sort of video, but didn't really know what. And then I went around all the film colleges in LA and posted ads, and I went on Craigslist and posted ads and tried to make it look as professional as possible, and said, you know, this is what I'm doing, but it's like kind of make it sound like a label was involved, because it is, I mean, it's mine, but it's, you know, like, this is how it's going to be, and offering, you know, I said, like, you know, budget's tight, but if giving, the idea was that if it works out, then you'll get a quarter of any money earned. And obviously at the moment, 0. But, you know, at some point that was at least something that we thought, well, maybe it'll attract somebody. And I got just awful. I mean, the people, the ideas were just so bad and so expensive, and just people saying like, yeah, it's going to cost like 15 grand to do and stuff. And, well, there's not, I can't do one, let alone any more. And then Dom, she got in touch through the Craigslist ad with this animation idea, and she'd written pictures for the first 2. And they were so far, I mean, they were almost exactly what finished or came out. And they were so cool and different and affordable as well. I mean, like, you know, it's her and it's me. There's no, you don't hire anyone else. There's no, you don't have to get a location or anything. There's no camera rental. There's no anything. So we stripped, you know, fortunately, it was the exact right person. I mean, that's my lucky break, meeting her. without her, this wouldn't have gone anywhere. Or if I mean, it hasn't gone anywhere, but you know what I mean. And then once she did the first two, it was like, right, this is with it. This is it. We do one for every single song. It was immediate that it was like, fuck yeah, this is great. And then and so just gradually, it's just been a thing that's just carried on going. And you know, it's all her. I mean, I've had a couple of ideas to help out, and you know, things particularly when I was writing some of the songs, they had a visual side to it. Like in the Great New Meaning one with the storm and the boat, that was literally what I had in mind when I wrote that music, because that was straight out of Interstellar, the Hans Zimmer bit, where a lot of that album actually with the big organs and then the kind of space theme, that was the piano, which I tried to do in the only lead, was trying to make it like empty and kind of space like, and then yeah, the big waves coming up and the storm, and so I had that in mind. And then she just goes away and just creates this whole amazing thing. And yeah, we've done 7. We finished the 8th one, Lose Someone. That's going to be out end of March. We're starting work on the 9th one this week, and then there's one more. And I've already got like the next album idea ready to go, how it's going to be, loading me. So I mean, this is it for me. Yeah, I mean, it's just so cool just to have someone that talented want to work with me all the time. It's just like, yeah, I want as many of these as I can get.
Well, I'll say this much: you got to do a better job of hiding a Lose Someone video. I found it this morning in your playlist.
Which one? Sorry,
the Lose Someone video is already out. You can access it from your playlist.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah, I didn't watch it, but it said unlisted, so I respected your wishes, and I was like,
oh right, I did
not watch this. But
I tell you what, I probably did is add it to the playlist without even knowing that it would be on. Oh right, well, the good news is that no one really follows me, so probably no one's seen it. But
I'm following you.
It's
I'm watching all the videos. They're great.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I'm really pleased with the next one. I think it's absolutely awesome. The next one, it's right. I mean, right. I've removed that. I had to do that. I get really paranoid about those sorts of things. But yeah, well, I had the idea for. It wasn't about COVID or Corona, or funnily enough, or anything, because I wrote it a couple of years ago. But the lyrics seemed to fit that idea much better than the original idea. And so we had this idea about the mental health side of the coronavirus. I mean, the whole album is about mental health stuff and my mental health and just the craziness and trying to get over it and all that. But it was that idea rather than the physical things of corona. It was like the mental side of it. And Don just made this amazing thing. It's just absolutely awesome. So I can't wait for that one to come out as well. But thanks for letting me know that. Yeah.
I thought it was a little weird, but speaking of your videos, your like arrangement tracks, the little isolate things, they're great. They're insightful. The vocal arrangements in particular, absolutely magnificent. But I've noticed that you had kind of changed them. Originally, it was the first half of your songs, but then they disappeared and you listened to the second half. Was there a reason for that?
The vocal only ones?
I think the instrumentals too. I can't remember.
The only ones I remember changing were the vocal ones, because I just thought I was just putting too much. Like, I think every single thing you put out has to be the right length, the right idea, the right thing. Don't just throw stuff out there. And I thought I'd put maybe too many things up, and I just started thinking, well, what's the main big bang of the song with all the vocals? And for the most part, it's like the outro where all the choiry stuff kicks in and everything. And I just thought it was a bit more impactful to have one big bit than lots of little bits. It's one of the things that annoys me most about social media and stuff, is just people put up everything and anything, and it's just mostly crap. And I just hate social media. I don't use it at all. And so I want to try and figure out a way of being able to use it for the things that I want to do, how I want to do them, and be happy with how I'm doing them. And so most of that was not being in any of them. And that was where the video ideas came from. I said, there's no restrictions other than I can't be in it. Because I just don't want to be in it. And I hate being in things and being filmed and being photographed and all that sort of stuff. And so it was the idea of having to do that. But then I thought, well, one of the things I need to do is put out more content. And if I've done everything, then it's a good way. It's like it was just kind of like the history of me, of like, this is what I did on each of the bits, and it was like just building the songs and building the parts. It was just kind of like an explanation of it, rather than trying to show off too much or do anything too crazy. It was just like, how do you build the story of, because I didn't film any of it when I was doing it, because it was just such a nightmare experience making it. I just didn't want to film it. It just took so long. But after I finished it, I thought, oh, it's not a bad way of adding more content that could be interesting, because I love all the behind the scenes studio stuff. Whenever I watch bands or documentaries, I always find those things the most interesting. And so, yeah, it just became trying to make bits of content that are interesting, but it's not just everything and anything.
I really appreciate it, because I was like, okay, this is a really good song to learn, but usually when you're trying to figure out a song, you can't see what they're doing with the fingering or anything, and it's all cluttered with the other tracks. So I thought that was a great idea, great way to get people to want to learn your song, seeing the individual parts. Like, oh,
Yeah,
I
it was
picked
like, it was
drums.
just also, it was just, there was so much fucking work that went into it. I just needed to do something else with it. It was because, and that was the other thing with the videos, but most people put out 3 an album. And if I'd done 3, it was like, well, what now? You know, it was like, I don't have anything else to put out. Yeah, and I put all that time and effort into that album. So it kind of just became a necessity. It's like, I need to keep putting out regular content. So just trying to make everything put outable, if that's the phrase.
Right. Okay, next thing is, so for Method Math is going to continue here. I wanted to ask you about the album cover. It looks like it's at a diner. Is that a real place, or is it like a staged photo?
Yeah, no, it's a photo I took on a tour. I was in a band for a couple of years, and we did a few tours. Just, 5 guys were in a converted van, sleeping in the van, driving around and doing all that for weeks and weeks. And it was one, I can't remember if it was the first tour, I think it might have been, and it was the last place we played. And it was literally a diner venue, and no one showed up. Like, there was not one person there. And it was actually closed when we turned up, and it was just like, fuck. Every tour I've been on has had those moments. Like, I played to one person twice on a tour and had the 2 last shows count, all that sort of crap. But it was just the last venue of this tour, and it looked really cool. And it was just this weird little place, and the colors looked cool. And I just took that photo, and then I needed an album cover. And when I was making the album, for some reason, I was like, that will be the cover. I'd always had it in mind. And then, it just started feeling like a bit of almost, like what's the fucking word? Where you are in, not in limbo, but, I've completely blanked on the word now, but, it's, that like space between heaven and hell where you're just sitting, and it's,
Purgatory?
Yes. I was like, it had that feeling of like emptiness and nothingness, and a place it's weird things, and they're kind of connected, but they're kind of not. And you're just there forever. And it was just, and I just thought that kind of summed up a little bit of how I felt. And it was just, I just thought it looked cool as well. So
That's the first thing I thought when I saw it, actually. I saw the title, I saw the picture, and I thought, this looks like a mini asylum.
yeah, it kind of felt like that. And then there's like the clowns and the puppets and the
Yeah.
cigarette machines, and it's like this kind of waiting room area for a weird place.
I keep going. So, other thing I want to ask you. So that was entirely self-produced over the course of 2 years on a limited budget. I want to know, how did you make it? What exactly was the equipment you're using? What was the composition process? Was it all at home? Did you go to a studio?
No, it was just all here. It was all in my room. I started out. I never did any production courses or anything, and then I'd started using GarageBand a few years before and just recording ideas with not really knowing anything what I was doing. And then how did I get into? Oh yeah, so that was it. I actually did an internship for Hans Zimmer's company. I was just not really doing anything, and I met someone at an event who knew someone who knew someone who knew someone, and I applied for it and had to sign up for some state like community college because it was unpaid and all this, and eventually got it. And that was the thing that really changed it, because I didn't know how to use Pro Tools. I'd never learned, and it just seemed like this spreadsheet of numbers and blank. It was like I just didn't know where you would start. And then when I went to the Zimmer thing, there's like 50 composers. The Game of Thrones guy was there. They were making Captain America while I was there. It was just like this huge, amazing place. And some were using Pro Tools, some were using Cubase, and some were using Logic. And I'd never used Logic. And then they were like, yeah, it's just the Apple version. It's like GarageBand, but souped up. And I looked into it, and it was a lot easier to get your head around because it was a lot more visual, and they made it for people, I guess, who didn't know how to use Pro Tools. And it was the Apple design, it's designed for anyone. And so that course, well, the thing with the Zimmer stuff, and then learning that, then it was just years of just using it to record and work and record and work. And then when I started doing the album, that's why it took so long, because I didn't really know how to record or how to mix or anything about compression or reverb or whatever. And so it was just trial and error for 2.5, 3 years of working on it. And the mixing took 6 months because every time I'd finish it, I'd listen to it on a speaker and it would just sound bad. And so it was like, right, what am I doing wrong? Before that, I did like a 90-part YouTube tutorial video on Logic and just watched that and wrote things down. And so that was it. It was just, this was the album where it was, I think, where they say, how do you get good at something is you put in your 10,000 hours. And that was what those 3 years were, of just 12, 15-hour days for 2 years of just trying to make it sound passable and then not stopping until I could bear to listen to it. It was basically that. It was like, if it was being able to just listen to it without wanting to kill myself, and then it was finished. And it was just work on everything. And the songs, I had like 15 old songs or pieces of music, and I thought I'll start with them and I'll just rewrite them all. And that whittled down to the 10. And that was it. It was just work and work and work. And if I didn't love it, it wasn't good enough. And then I would just keep doing it. But yeah, so it was just trial and error, really.
Well, it came out really good. I gotta say, it's very polished.
Thanks. I had such a huge paranoia because I finished it and I hadn't played anything to anyone at all, like not one note for the entire time, because I just didn't want anyone's feedback, because even if someone says, oh, they like it, I just assume they're lying to be nice. And so I just thought, well, what was the point of getting any feedback? I need to be happy with it. And that was it. It was just, I didn't think and I finished it and I just said, there's no way anyone's going to think this is good enough to be on the radio, good enough to be quality, anywhere, if I've made it at home. And so then I went and recorded the entire thing again with a producer in a studio with live instruments, and did that for 4, 5, 6 months, and then didn't finish and just said, I don't want to, I'm going to use my original version. Because I realized I'd already made the version I wanted to make, but I just didn't think, and it was only after doing it again, I realized like, oh, maybe my version is okay. And so, yeah, it was a lot of doubt and self-loathing and just real, it wasn't much fun.
Well, would you mind exploring a little bit more? You mentioned a lot of these, this is based on your systems of like depression and anxiety, addiction. Would you care to elaborate on what exactly that is for you? Like, what are those experiences that influenced?
Yeah, I mean, they'd all really, it's been all my life really, since I remember very young, kind of not 10 or 11, and just having these strange mental images all the time of real, just horrific things of just, but like, it's almost like being in a flashback, but yeah, it's not real. And then you get locked in, and I'd had that since I was about 10 or 11. And then, there was things like bullying and weight issues and self-esteem, and that just for my whole teenagers, I was just unhappy and, no confidence, didn't know what to do. And then just that really just kept going. I never really felt like I had any idea of what I was doing and how to do it, and just hated myself. And so that led to, and then when I was at college, there was huge insomnia and problems with like agoraphobia and pretty heavy drinking regularly. And then never really knew that was wrong. You just don't really know that that's wrong or bad, or that you're unhappy, or you just don't really know because you're just so used to it. It's just, that's normality, and it's just, that's the way it goes. And then when I left university, it was like, that was when I went into work, and that was where I really kind of blew up with heavy drinking and partying. And I was in a job in London, which was a lot of client-based stuff. And so you take people out a lot. And so it turned into just being out all the time in London drinking, and just, but being paid for because it was a client-based thing. And it just went out of control, and I never really realized it. And then when I moved to LA, and then living in LA, you know, it was just fun and partying and just craziness. And then it just, but I'd never really sat down, and never gone through therapy, never talked to anyone about it, because it was just like ashamed of everything, and you don't want to tell anyone about it and all that. And I went through a visa. I have to get a visa every few years you have to, it's the O1 visa, it's the artist visa, and you basically have to argue why you're allowed to stay every few years. And if you've been here for 9, 10 years, it doesn't matter. They can just say, sorry, you got to go home now. And it's always just horrific, because there's so much stress about whether you're even allowed to stay, whether everything's finished, whether you qualify. And so going through those experiences, and that was where the album, I'd had an experience where I was back home and I hadn't a visa accepted. And then they said, then I went for an interview, and they basically said, we're going to not allow you to go back into America. We're going to reinvestigate your visa. We don't think necessarily you qualify anymore, and we'll tell you when we've made a decision. And so that was when I was middle of my stay in America. I'd been on tour. I'd had a band. I was about to go on tour, about to do all this work, and then went back to England. They said, and I was stuck there for like 9 weeks without knowing if I would be allowed to go home. Didn't know when the decision would come. And when I was going through that, that was the rock bottom. Anxiety attacks, panic attacks, like misery, shame. I've fucked it all up. I failed. What am I going to do? And then I did get let back in. And it was after that, as when I started making the album. And when I started making the album, that whole process then turned into, it was like a therapy thing, because the whole album is about everything that's wrong with me. And so during that process, I then started to go to therapy and started to learn about different forms of treatment and trauma, and how to deal with it, and, you know, where addiction, or where it all rooted in the same problem, which is unhappiness and deep anger, and, you know, all that sort of stuff. And so once I started that, which was 5 years ago, it took, I mean, I'm still figuring it out, but that was where it really did start to make a big change. And so, you know, yeah, therapy and those sorts of things, and just learning what it is and why it's happening, and then doing something about it. And so it really all stemmed from the visas, and that album is where that treatment and improvement came from. But yeah, it's been, you know, it's always been there, but I think there's more of it now than ever. I mean, this last year, I mean, that's what the next video, which we want to do for the Lose Someone, is all about, is that the mental health side effects of this are going to go on for generations and get passed down because there's no help for people. Really, I mean, there's barely any medical help, let alone mental health help for many people. And so it's just how it's like a plague. It just, once it starts, if you don't deal with it, it just spreads, and then it passes on. And then, I mean, it's been genetic in my family from my parents, and where that's come from their parents, and how it's passed down. And yes, it's really sad, but I think it's only going to get worse, sadly, for a lot of people.
Well, what are you doing to cope with it?
I mean, I try and do everything, a lot of different things, which is everything from routine to what kind of exercise, to what kind of diet, to effort into music and what I'm doing with that, relationships with, you know, friends and family, therapy, learning about it, and just thinking about every aspect of your own life, and how because it's not just one thing that you need to do to get better. You need to work on, change everything. And that was the one thing I realized. It's like, yeah, well, going to therapy helps, but it's like, well, it's not the only thing. You've got to then learn. I mean, it's like music lessons. The music lessons are not the important thing. It's what you do in between the music lessons that help you improve. You know, you get taught the skills, and then it's up to you to go out and improve. And that was what I thought about the therapy. It's like, someone tells you certain things, there's no point just being like, okay, great, see you next week. It's like, you have to then do all the work in the week in between those sessions, and that's where the improvement will come. And that's where, and I enjoy it. I mean, I've found the best way of anything is you figure out the technique, and then you have to put in the time. And it's the same with anything. It's just, well, how do how do you improve your mental health? And so you read books on it, you listen to interviews about people who have been through it, watch documentaries, and then you just start to piece together the same answers keep coming up about what to do about it. And then so it's just then how you tailor that to yourself. And so yeah, it was hard work, but it's like anything. It's like if you want to stay in physical shape, you have to work out a lot, and if you want to stay in mental health shape, you've got to work out a lot. You got to do the same thing.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. What other questions? Sorry, I'm just taking a look at my question list.
Yeah, no worries.
Organize it. Well, I keep asking you for Method Madness questions, but if you do album, sorry.
I love that album. That's my favorite of the two. I can't listen to the acoustic one.
Really?
But I listen. Okay. I hear every slight off bit, and I know that's cool but it's just like, I know I can do better. I know I can do better. But with that Method to Madness one, it was like that at that time, that was the best I could do. I know I could. I mean, there are things that I would do better, change now, but I love that album. Yeah.
I read a comment the other day on something. Like, we spent like this is an engineer who's been working since the 80s. He's like, we spent about 40 years from our childhood trying to get out all the imperfections, only for the cool kids to think it's cool to have like tape hiss or a wrong.
Exactly. Note. And that's the thing. It's I was talking to my parents about it, and they said the same thing. You listen to music. People listen to your music to listen to what's good about it, and you listen to your music to find what's bad about it. And it's just a different way. You never hear the good, because you're looking for how can I improve it, and so you don't hear the bits that are right. You only hear the bits that are wrong. And when anyone else is listening to music, or if I listen to someone else's music, you're like, oh, I love that bit. Oh, I love that bit. That bit's great. You don't necessarily listen to like a slight flub because it's not important. But with your own music, that's the only thing you hear.
All right, then. So moving on from there, I do want to ask you what exactly went into the composition process. Is there a particular theme you set out for, like compositionally? Or is it kind of all over the place? Because there's some songs that fit a certain motif, like Let It Die and Into the Fire, complement each other very nicely. But then there's songs like Flow and Great New Meaning, which are a little idiosyncratic for the album.
It was just, I had those pieces of music when I started, like 15 songs or pieces of music. And I thought, if I can start from this, and they were all, some of them were old things that I'd written for old bands and never been used. And some of them were like, I tried to pitch for TV ads and stuff like that, and none of them got picked up. And so there were things for that I reused. And so I had these things, and then it was just, okay, so song one is like this. And I would go through every part, like the verse, and it's like just the music, not any lyrics or anything, and just be like, what can I change? What's the worst bit in that verse? And then rewrite that part. So if I thought the bass line was the weakest part, I'd rewrite a bass line. And then it's like, what's now the worst part? And it's like, okay, the guitar part. And it's like, okay, so what's a guitar part that's better, that fits with the bass line? So it's like, oh, that works. And then it's like, well, now the drum pattern doesn't quite fit because it's too complicated. So simple. And so it was just find the weakest part of every part of the song and rewrite that until you're happy with every single part. And now I don't write like that at all. It's since I started doing the acoustic stuff. Now all I do is I'll play the guitar, or I'll have an idea and then figure out on guitar, and then I'll hear the production in my head of how it's going to be, and it's like, oh, that would be cool. But before, it was just on the computer, typing in little bits or figuring out a piano part or a note, and then it's like, oh, that bit's not as good. Get rid of that, rewrite that. So there was never any thought of this is going to be an upbeat song, this is going to be a slow song, this is going to be a funk. Ever. From when I started it, that was the order of the songs, even though they didn't sound anything like how they sound now. And then I just worked on them individually, one by one, and then they came out how they came out. And it wasn't an intentional thing. Like if there was something cool in it, we'd be like, oh, that's where it's going. There was always that breakthrough moment. It was like, oh, that's cool. That's where that song's going now. But yeah, none of it was planned. So it's funny how it came out. It really is like, it's not really anything that I thought I knew how to do it. It was, I have to write an album in 3 years, otherwise I'm going to get kicked out of the country. And so I need to make something that's going to make me qualify to stay. And if it's not good enough, I have to leave. And so it was horrible. And it was that was the pressure and that was the motivation. So it was just don't stop until it's good enough. But yeah, it's funny. They all kind of sound different and but fit. But yeah, it's kind of cool. I like that.
That's funny. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but that reminds me of how I discovered you, actually. So I was walking into the studio one day, and our A&R guy was taking a listen of the CDs we received. One of them was yours, and he was playing "Let It Die" through the stereo. And I was like, "Ah, it sounds great. What is that?" And he says to me, "It's okay. I'm probably gonna scrap it." My jaw just dropped. It was just mashed crescendo, these great like buzzy synthy sounds. I was like, "Are you kidding me? You can't get it right." I'd be happy to take it off your hands. Takes out the player, hands the CD to me. Here we are now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
I
I'm
don't
really
know how he ended up with that CD. It's funny how people end up with music. I don't know how he must have ended up with something, but yeah, I mean, I've had that from the whole time. It's just is one of the things with the social media stuff is like I didn't want to send things to people. I didn't want to pitch to people because it's the most miserable experiences because you put all that work in and literally everyone says no. I mean, there's not many. Like I would say, Spotify playlists. Like there are certain things that I pay for now, like the promotional campaigns that do the press, and I have things that pitch to Spotify playlists because I just thought if I don't want to do it, but I know I have to do it, I'll pay the money to get the professional people to do that. But I would email. I paid for the Spotify playlist library, book, which has thousands and thousands of entries, and you email them all and they're like, you've got to write about them, you've got to praise them, you've got to tell them how great their playlists are, and then you've got to beg them to play your thing. And so it's like, okay, so you do all that and you get remarks like, I don't like the mix, don't think it's very good, yeah, I really like it, but I'm not going to put it on. Yeah. And you're just like, what's the fucking point? Like, why am I doing this? And so I just stopped sending anything to anyone because I just thought it's the one thing you can't do anything about is how people react to it. So put it all out, put a lot of it out in the right places, and then do what you can, but don't send things to people because it's just too depressing.
I'm glad you sent it to us at least. I mean, I still have the CD. I
I
brought
don't
it
know how
back home.
that was probably from, I know when
It was like September, October, I think,
I know
of
I did a
2018.
CD thing for because I have the company that they do the press for each video whenever I do it. And so they send it to people and get, what they can. And we did one for when the album came out and they printed up some singles to send to radio. So maybe it must have been that, but that was September 2019?
Yeah, that was when I
Yeah.
wrote. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Man, well, it's good to know that they did that because I didn't even know if they just took my money and told me that they'd send a load
Oh
of
no,
CDs.
no, no, this package is great. I still have it. Beautiful
Oh,
jewel
cool.
case. I
I don't
wish I
have
had I
that.
want a covered in COVID CD now. You're not going to make any more?
Well, I don't have any. I never had a From Method to Madness CD, and we
You
never
don't
made
even
it.
have one?
I've never had one. They only made.
What?
I was like, "Oh, can you send me one?" And they never did.
Oh, come
So
on.
I'm gonna make something just so I have something. But no, the COVID one, nothing. And well, the COVID one was. I just didn't even realize how much of a bitch it would be to put out because didn't think licensing and people don't want you to put out their music. And so like, oh, okay. So I recorded the entire album, filmed it all, ready to go. And I was like, oh, you know what? I should sort out the licensing because I don't want to rip anyone off and I want to do it properly. And I don't want to, fair enough. And so I found a company who do all the licensing stuff. And it's just like, people say no. And, it's like, I'm trying to pay you to put out some music that you'll still get paid for. And then you send it to them and they say, no, we don't want you to put it out. And it's just like, well, why? It blew my mind that if you want to pay, like a publishing company's job is to get paid for putting songs or, it's just to get them money. And they still didn't, and some of them still turn it down and still say no and still say that. And so there, a lot of them, I just thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to put it out. And then if someone, if I hear about it, it's because something might have taken off and then I'll deal with it. If, they're not going to sue people who've had 20 views. So I thought, well, that's what I'll do. But yeah, it was a nightmare. It's just it was really strange. I didn't expect that.
Okay, next question, because I'm a bit of a gear nerd. I want to know what exactly did you use sonically? Like I mentioned the buzzy little tones and Let It Die. What were you using to record? Like what are your guitars? Do you have a pedal board? Any software?
In terms of bass, I have a SansAmp pedal that I used when I was on stage, and so I plugged that in, and I had what's the amp? It is a Mark bass amp head. But the guitars and stuff, it's just all in the software. I have some guitars. I've got an old Telecaster and an old Gretsch and a PRS, and then I've got an old Fender Jazz bass and a Martin acoustic, and everything was on that. But it was just, what did I get? Contact or Complete or one of those package things, which has all the keyboards and all the drums. And then I just made them myself. So I would go into the guitar sound, or no, for the organ. So for the organ, the big distorted organs thing, that was basically from Interstellar, with the idea of doing really big and funny enough, I knew that I would sit in with the guy who worked with Hans Zimmer on those organs. Like he was a TV composer. And when I did that internship, I would sit with him, and he was like, yeah, dude, he was this fucking awesome guy with called Wayne. And he was, yeah, dude, I was in there, we're cranking those organs, and it was just like blowing, and he was just talking about it. And then when I started doing the album, it was like, that was the first thing that came into mind, of like this really over distorted, crunchy organ sound. And so it was just playing around with it. And it was, yeah, I mean, like the keyboard I use is I only have two tiny little 2-octave shitty MIDI keyboard, and I had an Apollo Twin universal interface, and that's it. I didn't have any other equipment. I've got an iMac, 2 small speakers and headphones, and it was mix it on headphones, sit at the back of the room, mix it on the speakers, and then just and then the drums, I had 2 different drum kits on there that I had made, and then I would blend them together for different levels for different songs, and tune the drums differently for different songs. And it was like, that snare needs to come lower for that song. And so, it was every hit of every instrument. It was like that I went into, and that's why it took so long, because I just didn't know how to do it. And so it was just doing it until it sounded okay. But yeah, it's all just trial and error, really.
Cool. What about your microphone, that the ones in all the cover videos?
Yeah, that's a U87, Neumann U87. That's a fucking great mic.
Yeah.
I was really lucky about that. My housemate, my best mate, bought it, and he just didn't really use it. And so I just said, well, can I? And he's like, yeah. So I've been using it, and I bought it off him, and that's the mic I did all the vocals for, and the guitars for the first album. And then everything obviously for the covers album. And then even in the version of From Method that I didn't use, we recorded everything on that microphone. I mean, we had live violins and cellos and trumpets, and they all came drummers, and then we just never used it, any of it. It was a funny experience. But yeah, that U87 mic, I mean, that's a great mic. Yeah, I'm really happy with that.
Live trumpets.
Yeah, for the flow, we this fucking awesome guy called, I'll remember his name hopefully later on. But he plays with like Brian Wilson or something, I had it. What's it? Probert, something like that. I'll try and remember it. But and yeah, because I just thought, if I've done it, it can't sound good. So let's go and do it all with real instruments. And we got this guy, and it was cool, but it just sounded like, I wanted it to sound big and modern. And with all the live instruments, it kind of sounded more like a 70s version of it, like a band playing together in a room. And I didn't want it to sound like, I wanted to try and make it sound like that sort of music, like 70s music, but made it like modern pop. So big, on the clip, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, everything under kind of, you could hear everything on the radio. There was no unnecessarily long drawn out bits, so. And then the other version with the live trumpets and stuff, it sounded really cool, but it just didn't sound like how I envisioned it. And so I just went back to my one. But yeah, that was a stressful time of doing 6 months work and then paying all that money and then saying, no, I'm not going to use it.
Yeah, because you mentioned you had a tight budget, but that stuff's really expensive. So
yeah, that's why I spent a lot of money and I lost a lot of money and I went into a lot of debt and I had a lot of credit card problems. And, it was just like, that's the way it goes. I didn't want to, but it was good. It was actually really good because the guy I recorded with, he's a really great guy and a really good producer. And he, Doug Green, who worked with Scott Weiland and Stone Temple Pilots, and he'd done stuff with, fucking hell, Sheryl Crow and really big people. and he had all this knowledge. And so I learned a huge amount, and just knowing that if I hadn't done that, I would have always wondered, would it have been better to have recorded it with someone else? But because I did and not used it, it's like, okay, at least I knew I made the right choice. And it was, it was time and it was a lot of money. But I'm one of those people that I have to know that it's the right thing to do. I don't want to have any doubt. And so even if that meant just recording the entire thing, and it was real intense, but it was, but yeah, it was, like it's part of the deal.
Then, okay, so trumpets again, brings your flow. I want to ask you, so I read that your name for Diamond Shake comes from a particular preparation, a particular marijuana strain, and that flow is about marijuana. I didn't get that vibe at all from the lyrics. Would you mind explaining to me how it's about weed?
So originally it was about because I started smoking weed mostly because of my insomnia. And so I wrote the lyrics, and it was like lying wide awake and while the story, and it was just about not being able to sleep and going slightly crazy from lack of sleep. And so the verse lyrics, it was just about that. And then with the flow through the day, and then the chorus, I think with most lyrics and most chorus lyrics, as long as you can remember them, they're catchy. That was what I was going for. The two things were, I want people to get people moving and sing along. So everything had to have a groove and everything had to be catchy. And then, and so I had the music, and it was just like, and it was like, and then because I was listening to, so it was just like about flow through the flow was basically, a metaphor for just being high. And so it's like flowing through the day. It's like, and then it's like, because I can't, flow through the day because I can't sleep through the rage, as I hold on to breathe because I need you. And that was basically, it just sounded, it fit. And then when I was like holding on to breathe, how people, when they inhale, it was like holding, and so it was like, that'll do, that kind of fits. But yeah, originally that song I wanted to groove. It was like, there's a Stones song called Love and Cup, and Taylor Swift's Shake It Off. And it was trying to kind of blend those two. And so that's how the music came along. And then, then the lyrics, it wasn't, I don't think I started out trying to write it about cannabis. The lyrics came out and I was like, oh, that'll be about weed. And then so you start, but I just didn't want to write, and the same with the video, I just didn't want to do stuff as like, let's get high, just get wasted. It was more trying to be like, it was again with the mental health stuff and how it actually helped me go through it.
Cool. So I want to ask you too, have you tried Diamond Shake?
Shake is, it's actually Diamond was the strain.
Yeah.
But when it's prepared, so it gets separated into three different things. There's a bud, which is obviously the stuff you sell. Popcorn is the tiny little nugs that people wouldn't want to buy for full price, but there's still good weed. And then shake is just the offcuts and the like the THC crystals and the leaves when you've trimmed it, and then that all gets sold to get compressed down into the into its like purest form, and then that becomes like shatter, or like the for vape, the juice, like the vape juice stuff. It's like that's where so people do, when they make all the concentrates and stuff, it's not from the bud, it's all from the shake. Because it's cheaper to buy, and you don't need to waste such good bud. So it was just because I saw bags when they were separated, so it was bud, popcorn, and shake, and so I'd always just see Diamond Shake, and so I was like, the Diamond was pretty good. It's like a kind of hybrid. It's like a hybrid, and it was pretty nice. But it's a kind of similar, maybe like I think it's a little bit more sativa-y than like a Gorilla Glue, but it was like a kind of slightly sativa-y, high-ish hybrid, but it's pretty good.
I gotta be honest, when I first heard Diamond Shake, I imagined like a milkshake made of diamonds.
Yeah, it was just, again, it was, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, easy to remember.
Yeah.
It's just every other band name I've ever had has just been fucking pointless and just stupid and really long and difficult to remember. And so when I thought about it, it was like, oh, that sounds like a band name. I didn't want to put my name because there's so many names out there of people it's hard. You want something that's memorable and punchy, and so that was really it. It was just like, yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah. What else would I ask? Yeah, that's right. So you keep mentioning the Hans Zimmer company. Can you say? Do you mean Bleeding Fingers?
Yep.
So when were you working there?
When did I? It was an internship, and it was 6 years ago. Where are we? 36. Yeah, it must have been about 6 years ago. And it was a couple of months. It was fucking amazing. It was so cool. And I completely lucked into it and blagged my way into it. And I would just be walking around as like, it was essentially, there was three or four buildings of studios. And so there were tons of people in there all working on just every film. I mean, like they were making the Ron Howard film score, and I met Ron Howard. They were doing Batman versus Superman when I was there, and planning and working on the tour that they then put out on like Netflix and all that. And so you just be walking around, and so it was cleaning. It was a lot of cleaning, basically. The kitchens. It's like intern work, but for 2 hours a week, you would be able to sit in with different people. You would never sit in with Hans, but or the big cheese. But I mean, yeah, I sat on the guy mixing Inferno. That's the Ron Howard one, and I sat in with one of the guys. I think it's Henry. Is it Henry? Chapman? Not Henry something. Who does all like he was doing the Captain America. I think it was Civil War at the time. And he was in England doing the orchestration for the stuff they'd written. And then his assistant, I was sitting with him while he was finishing the composition for one of the scenes where, like a fight scene where he's pulling down like the helicopter on the top of the building. And he was just like sitting in with this guy while he's making this music for this huge blockbuster. And so it was so cool just to be able to walk around. And they were really nice. Like Hans, when I was leaving, it was a Super Bowl Sunday. And I had to do the shift from 2 till 10, and there was no one in, like no one. And so just walking around for 8 hours. But Hans was in with his engineer because they had the Batman, Superman, and the tour that they were working on. And so my last job was, I'll go and get him dinner. And so they all, they tell you what they want, and you go and get it, and you set it up. And I was just walking out, and he was eating there, and then it was, and he's like, oh, so you're leaving? And I was like, oh, yeah, it's my last day. And so he's really nice. They got up, he came and had a chat for a few minutes, shook my hand, was like, good luck, hope everything goes well, blah, blah. And so it was just one of these really positive experiences because of just like real high quality musicians and industry of like, I'd only ever been in bands and, never had that sort of, I mean, I'd recorded with a couple of producers who were known-ish, but not big. But then when you're doing that, it's like, that's a fucking Oscar from The Lion King, that's, it's just all these things where it's just, I've grown up with all this music and there he is and there are all these people. It's like, it was the first time I felt like I was involved in it, in the music industry. And it set off all the learning, and even the other interns were great because they'd all been through like Berklee College of Music and they were all absolute geniuses. And I had never done any of that. And they were just like, oh, get this software. Oh, yeah, try that, do this, that'll help. And they were all really nice and, giving advice. And so I learned a huge amount from that. Yeah, that was a big turning point.
That sounds absolutely amazing.
It was.
What projects did you work on specifically? Were you just sitting on the mixes? Did you have did they let you touch the board, so to speak?
Oh, no,
for lack of
no,
better words.
No, fuck no. I wasn't. No, they're like, you sit at the back, you don't say anything. But I mean, some people were more involved. Like the guy mixing, who's, I guess, Hans Zimmer's usual mixer. I was just like, I'm not going to say a fucking word. I don't want to piss this guy off. And he was really nice. I think he was an English guy, actually. But he was really nice. And then there were others. There was a guy who worked in the TV bits, and there was other people. And they were just, oh, yeah, man, how you been doing? What you were working on? This, and really open about it. And just really cool. But, no, you wouldn't. I wasn't there to work. But there were, I mean, the interns did get jobs with those composers when they turned up. So there was a genuine path. But because I didn't have any formal training in Pro Tools or Logic, they would ask, right, do these stems and get this there and do all that. And I was just, I don't know what any of that means. And so I knew I wasn't qualified to work there. But as an experience that just opened everything up. It was perfect. It was so cool. Yeah.
Look at you now.
Yeah. Well, getting there.
Yeah. Okay, I have two more questions. The
Yeah.
first is a loop back. There's a motif in Shake and Flow. The shaking is all right. Do you have the lyrics right? Which of the songs came first?
So all the music would have been I did all the music first, and then I went back in to do the vocals and try and write vocals for all of them. And then it would have, I don't know, it probably would have been Shake. It was just, there's things where it just seemed to fit and it was funny. And it was just like, I think what probably happened is I did Shake first because it's earlier in the album. And then when I got to the flow bit and there was the other break, I probably just started singing it again. And I thought, oh, we can't do the same thing. And then so why not? And then just do the same thing, except in the first half, in Shake in the first one, it's like so the album's kind of like on the first half is on the way down to Great New Meaning, which is the bottom, and then the second half is on the way up until the last song where it completely fails and it's the end. And so the first half, Shake, when it was like meant to be this slightly, it was about like being in denial, and when you'd always say, yeah, I'm all right, but deep down it's like you're a fucking mess. But then Flow, when it was on the second half of the album on the way up, it was like, oh, I'm doing all right now, I'm getting, and it was like that change. And so it was how the same thing meant two different things dependent on how I was at that period in my life. So it probably was that way around. It was probably I did it first, and then in Shake, in the darker one, and then it kind of lifted up for the second one. But yeah, there's a lot of those little things which came from the Zimmer stuff, is the little motifs. And one I nicked straight out of Hans Zimmer. It was the first big motif. It was from the Superman soundtrack, the Man of Steel, and it's the dong dong. That's the Superman. It's in that film. It's like this. It does it a lot. It's like boom, 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 boom. And in my album, it's just dong dong on guitar. It's in like every song. And so it was little things like that which I got from working with him, or not with him, but and understanding film scoring, where I wanted to then, and like there's hi-hat hits or drum rhythm patterns that are the same in bits of songs. Just to try and tie it all together a bit and make it one continuous thing rather than 10 different songs. I think that was when we were talking about like style and how they were kind of different. It was doing those things, like putting the same notes in, or the same drum hit here, or the same backing vocal, that I thought would then help tie it together a bit more.
Cool. Okay. So then the last question I have is, shoot, I'm blanking. Oh, come on. I'll ask you the other question. Then I'll ask you my bonus question first. Then
yeah, go for it.
It'll come back to me. I ask everyone this: what music are you currently listening to?
I'm only listening. It's funny. I listen to Miles Davis at the moment. Just only. I only found. I was listening to a lot of. Basically, I was listening to a lot of Black American music. So it was all soul, funk, and then I was listening to a lot of gospel and blues, like the old stuff, like Lightning Hopkins. I really got into, and people like Aretha Franklin and Sam Cooke and all these really old Black American artists that I didn't really know an awful lot about. And then there was a Netflix documentary on Miles Davis, and it's called Birth of the Cool. And I watched it, and and I never really got jazz at all. And then I think that's what weed has really helped, is to help understand music a bit more, about what it is I like and what I don't like. And when I watched that and I heard the music, and so over the last couple of months, it's literally been from like his first album, just every album, and he's got like 50 of them. And so it's pretty much, all I'm listening to at the moment. I love it. It's just great for, because it's not really the same sort of structure. And so it's much more free flowing, which I really like. And so when you're trying to kind of think of different things, or, really get into a different space mentally, it doesn't have that structure of like verse, chorus, where there's always a point where your brain it kind of registers songs, in the same way. Okay, so 3.5 minutes, verse, chorus, outro, end of song. And you can always, your brain always kind of keeps a a track of where you are, because every song is always designed, you know, you write songs to fit a certain formula. And then with that, it was just like this free flowing thing where, so your brain, it kind of switches off certain parts of your brain in a different way of listening to music. And I just love that. And it just kind of sets off all these different ideas and all this different sort of creativity that, yeah, it's pretty much all I've been listening to recently.
Okay, I just remember that question. I forgot. It's so simple too. I wanted to ask you, what's your favorite track from each of your albums?
It's changed a lot. I think the first album, the more and more I listen to it, I think probably the last one, Heard It All Before. I think just because I think as songs go, there's not many I really know that are like that. I think it's pretty original in terms of the production and the weird sounds and then the groove where like the kind of, it almost feels like a bit of like a funeral march, and then the big finish. And so I've always I Great New Meaning I love as well, because I love the bits with the big choir stuff, because I can just hear how much went into it. And you know, you hear all those big bangs, and it's like the outro of Let It Die. The outro of Let It Die, where the bit was like, and I'm holding on, that's probably my favorite bit of the whole album. I always love that bit, the big bang. But probably Heard It All Before. I think that's probably the weirdest and darkest and kind of coolest. And then on the Covers album, I can't even remember what was on it. It might be, I think it's probably Helter Skelter. I did like Please Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. I really like that, just because it gives me a bit of a chance to kind of really show off a bit, and it's kind of like that dark, bluesy, jazzy number. But I think probably Helter Skelter. I think the difference from the original, I like singing it. It's a comfortable range. It's a good range, and you can kind of, it's got the ups and the downs, and it's got that dynamic that you were talking about earlier. Yeah, so it's probably that one.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you again for agreeing to come on. I learned a lot.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of questions for since I got the CD, so it's been like over a year. I'm glad to finally get those answers. I should share this too. My favorite moment is still from that intro from Let It Die. Just the crescendo is amazing, and the push distorted organ. I just make it like an evil clown, like welcome to the madhouse.
It was meant to be like that. It was meant to be.
It's great, yeah. It just fits the whole theme from
a circusy vibe.
Yeah, it's like welcome to the madness
and dementia, and kind of just diving into this darkness. And it was like, it was like the steps down, the first kind of steps down.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to whatever is up next. If do you have any projects in 2021? Do you have anything more coming out?
So the video for Lose Someone's going to be out at the end of March, and then the video for Ghosts will be May. The video for Heard It All Before will be July, and then but then there'll always be the bass things, and the guitar stuff. I've got to do a couple of those today, and then I'm going to try and, because I did those original versions, so the acoustic versions of the album from Method to Madness, I'm going to do a few more of them and film them in a similar way that I did with Covered in COVID. But I'm going to wait till the summer and later for that. So yeah, there's a fair amount, and I'm still writing the second album, which I've got a lot for. So that's the next big one as well. But yeah, there's always a lot to do.
So a second cover album and a second studio.
Not a covers album. It will be my songs from Method to Madness, but done in that style.
Oh, so you're gonna continue the Unplugged? Those are really good.
After the last video,
nice.
For the big heavy animation stuff, I'm gonna do at least 4 or 5 of those rewritten as acoustics, and then that'll help bridge the gap for the next album.
That's great. I'm looking forward to that. Well, I've kept you long enough.
No,
so
thanks.
I'm gonna let you go. Yeah. Thank you again for doing this. This is great to get all those answers and get your insights. And
no problem. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's I really appreciate the time.
I was also a little early on your end. You were like, it's like 11 a.m. right now over there, right? You woke up at like 10 to this?
But no,
I tell you about that.
I'm up early. I'm up at like 6 or 7, so I'm all right with that. The trumpet player was Probert Gregory. I just remembered that. Who played with like Brian Wilson and stuff, but that's the only one. I just remembered that.
If there's anyone else, let me know. I'll type it up, put his little annotation in the video.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think, but yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
So, take
All
care.
right. Have a good day.
You too, mate. Bye.